Hey everyone. So the war in Russia and Ukraine, I guess that's not going to be slowing down as we were suspecting. The escalation is actually the jump was even higher than what maybe some people were ready for. It seems that it will it will be a continued escalation, and people have been wondering, is there a solution to this? People have been wondering, is there a anywhere where you can negotiate, as they call it, a golden bridge for let's say Putin. But it's clear that the most of the reason why we're having this war is that there's not going to be that sort of negotiation, right? So we're seeing that there might not sitting down and talking about things is not part of the plan, which is unfortunate because a lot of things it looks like it's going to happen. If none of the negotiations are in plan, now we have to sort of try and see how this is going to play out and then position ourselves to mitigate like a bunch of risk. There's too much risk, right? Especially if you're on the 40 and above, especially if you have children, the risk is all around you is too high. So you want to de-risk wherever you can, right? But basically what we're looking at is that the Russian forces they have been getting more and more forces, right? They've been building their forces, they've been conscribing, if I'm not mistaken. These signs are not good. These signs basically are telling us that the war is going to be escalated. It's going to be bigger and bigger. But if you look at the war between Ukraine and Russia, that size war seems to be is going to be expanding past Ukraine to other nations, right? So it might not be just full-on Russia and just the Ukraine war. It looks like it could expand. That's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And if you have one wheat exporter attacking the other one, and two of these wheat exporters are having trouble, then there's a lot of issues, right, with food and whatnot. And I think that's been making the rounds. A lot of people should understand this. I think when you look at all the areas where there are concerns, whether it's wheat, whether it's neon, the more important part that's lacking, I think, is potash, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that problem is going to be fixed. And so that problem, we should really begin to see it materializing next year. In general, for the West, largely should be okay. But when I mean by largely okay, I mean by food insecurity. It's not going to be like the third world where food insecurity might be, it's going to be concerning. But the prices of food it could be going up. It's possible it might go up in the West, so prepare for that. But when we see what it seems to be supposedly a Russian retreat, I don't know if they're going to fully retreat, right? Because if you look at the map of parts of Ukraine, it appears that the Russians need to take parts of Ukraine in order to have access to other points that are important to them. I think people have been talking about this where Odessa is going to be one of those. They need to take that. They need to have that for them. The other one I think is going to be Transnistria, right? The other point where I think they need to push out their forces to mitigate any future issues, right? And then it starts to get a little bit out there. On the westward and southwest expansion, those seem to have been expected, right? For when people were talking about how they were going to push towards Moldova, maybe some people were a little bit skeptical, but now we're seeing that, and it looks a little bit more likely. When we look at the Russian-Ukraine war, it's obvious that the U.S. does not want to put boots on the ground from what we know of, right? I think there's other sorts of reports and whatnot, but basically the U.S. does not want to put boots on the ground, right? How this war goes on, it'll be the same thing. You'll just grab a country, Romania or whoever, Poland, whoever, and they'll have their troops go on, but the U.S. will be funding and giving all that tech as well. That's all probable as well instead, right? And so basically for people to imagine and see that, it's going to be really difficult, right? To see that scenario happen. For Russians, it appears that they have interest pushing a little bit more outward than we'll see how this actually unfolds. What I think is going to happen overall is just a general escalation of the war. So this is the worrisome part of these escalations, is that it's an escalatory trap, it seems, right? Where the other keeps escalating and the other is trapped and has to escalate back and forth. And this is what everybody, strategists, when they analyze how nuclear war can happen, this is how. And when we look at the escalations between politicians, right, and posturing and staturing, they just put out a bunch of statements saying take any territories of Ukraine, or if you expand any of that stuff, that's that's a hard red line. The U.S. is not going to tolerate that, and all of that stuff. You had Putin just not too long ago come out and says, dude, they said that this is now serious. This is, a huge threat. And with a lot of action they're showing, it seems a lot of things are happening where escalatory trap seems to be more and more. People are wondering about my thoughts about China and Taiwan is that there's a lot of people that I see that are talking about, China's going to invade Taiwan. My perception is that that's too much weakness, right? I think for a lot of other people, they might see a Chinese invasion of Taiwan as a strength, but my perception is that it's heavy weakness. And I could be wrong, but, being a descendant of that similar culture, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, I think would be perceived as weakness. And because, first of all, when it comes to size and capability, it's imbalanced. It doesn't even compare. And so if you have to act and go through with an invasion, it shows that you were not able to come to an agreement or get your desired outcome without confrontation of that sort. And so that would actually be perceived as a lot of weakness. Especially I think a lot of the Chinese people that are there in China, they will perceive it as weakness. The thing, however, is that if maybe the CCP wanted to be perceived as strong in Western eyes and everybody else's eyes, I could be wrong. But when I look at the situation, it seems that sort of invasion of Taiwan is sort of waste of time or useless. It's important to China, but I don't think China has to exert any force to get what they want in Taiwan. Taiwan is the distance of Los Angeles to Las Vegas, that's longer than the distance from the Chinese Bay to Taiwan's beaches. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the distance from San Diego to the outer edges of Orange County is about the distance of the bays of China and Taiwan beaches. You see that's what we're dealing with. And so again, a lot of people were saying that, even makes any more actions or talks, then the US is going to react. Fast forward, nothing's happened, right? It's because for the simple fact that it's just not worth it. Semiconductor chips are critical, 100%, but the movements to have those semiconductor chip lines elsewhere is already being made. And so sooner or later, these companies like Samsung, they will get things going, but it's going to take time. That's my thoughts and overview on Taiwan. Let's see how that plays out. But how does this affect the markets? Because that's a huge proponent of all of this warfare and tensions, right? The Federal Reserve is going to continue on its path, but they said they're going to stop when something breaks. And it seems that I think something might break internationally. People were suspecting that maybe it might be labor with skyrocketing unemployment, and that's certainly possible. We'll have to keep an eye and see, but it seems that maybe internationally there might be something breaking where the Fed will have to stop. In either case, the Fed has the rates are already hiked up, and so they have about 3.5, I think. They want to get it to another 100 basis points, so this means that we're either going to reach those 100 basis points coming in November, or something happens, they have to turn around. I think that what's actually going to happen when you're looking at the yen, the won, everything, all the currencies, all the other countries, it's they're struggling, right? They're trying to pay back in dollars. I think the Fed has time and room to go up to try and reach that other 100 basis points. But after that, the setup for the 100 basis points by November, December, maybe January, looks like it's possible. The setup for all of that war tension, because Russians are now gearing up, winter will be coming. By the time it's end of January, maybe you might see movements. By the time it's February, we might see some sort of things going down. So keep an eye on that, and let's see how this unfolds. It seems that path dependencies are narrowing, right? So people have a lot of different ways on how the S&P can go, at what time frame, this and that. But the thing is, when we're looking at the constraints of outer limits, the path dependencies of what likely would happen when it comes to the Federal Reserve's actions and the direction of the S&P it looks to be narrowing. The markets are lining up, it seems, with a continued slog with the risk of drawdown, but then with a high risk of a drawdown comes high probability of cutting rates and turning around. Not even the Fed pausing, but the Fed pivoting. I think we might see those things happen closer to each other than we think, rather than far apart. I don't think that things will drop in the economy and that all of a sudden the Fed is taking forever to turn around. I don't think that's the case. I think that if you remember drawdown in the spring of 2020, soon after they had packages ready to go. If we have a drawdown such as that, then we should see other sorts of packages that will float the markets. If we don't have those sorts of drawdowns, we can't see just a slower pace of it. But overall, as the system stands, as long as we're still on the dollar system, that's how things are going to work. And unless some things change, which I think is going to be happening in the future, in this decade, I think maybe we'll see what the changes are and how the new system is rewritten. Because remember, if there's a Bretton Woods 3 or a new system, different sorts of people are going to be able to have a say in it, right? There's not going to be just US making all the decisions. It's going to be Russia and China that's going to want to make a lot of those decisions as well. And so I think that's what we're going to see. But anyways, that's it for me, guys. Let me know what you guys think. And if you guys have any information on the Ukraine situation, that would be extremely helpful because, as you know, it's a little bit difficult to figure out what's actually going on. If you have disagreements on the Chinese actions with Taiwan, also let me know, especially if you're from China. You know, if you guys agree on what the market outlook looks like, then let me know too, because I think the way I'm seeing it seems more and more likely, and that's how I am gearing myself up for.